everyone, and welcome to the Data for Food 2030 podcast. In this podcast series, we focus on the project's 9 case studies, which are real-life examples that aim to map and improve the data economy for food systems. In today's episode, we spotlight the case study Short Food Supply Chain, or for short, Zero Food Loss and Waste. For this reason, I'm very happy to welcome Tomaz, Zadravec, Senior Project Manager at our project partner ITC Innovation Technology Cluster. Tomaz is an expert in the field working on the Zero Food Loss and Waste case study, and together we will discuss everything about it. Tomaz, welcome and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and thanks.
So let's start from the beginning. Can you give us an overview of the case study and which are its primary goals?
Yes, of course. So the Zero Food Loss and Waste case study is taking place in Slovenia, specifically in the Pomurje region, which is a northeastern part of Slovenia. So our primary goal is ambitious, but essential, we would say. So creating a data-driven solution to reduce food loss and waste across regional food supply chain. We have set some ambitious goals for us. So first, we want to create a data-driven platform that could provide visibility across the entire short food supply chain. Secondly, we aim to implement food waste hierarchy in practice, so redirecting surplus food to food processors, animal feed, biogas, and lastly, so going to, as a last resort, probably to compost. And third, we wanted to demonstrate how basically data sharing could create tangible benefits for all participants. And finally, we somehow set some establishment with a governance model that would ensure fair and transparent data exchange between organizations of all sizes. Ultimately, I would say our goal wasn't just basically to measure food waste better, but it was to create some kind of a systematic approach that would significantly reduce it through basically better coordination, visibility, and collaboration among all food system actors. So yeah, with all help, somehow we are proving that when you give stakeholders better visibility and coordination tools, you can transform surplus food into an opportunity while building more sustainable and efficient food system at the end.
Thank you very much for this very well outlined introduction. And now I would like to ask you if you can tell us what sparked the idea for this case study.
Yes, of course. So as already mentioned, so we are talking about food loss and waste. So basically what sparked this case study was somehow shocking reality that 1/3 of all food produced worldwide ends up wasted. So here in Slovenia, for example, we are talking about roughly 72 kilos of food waste per person annually. This is basically like throwing away full grocery bag of good food every month. And this was somehow what sparkled the idea. So when we look at these data, we found out that about half of this waste comes from households, with another third from restaurants, schools, and hospitals. So this sector. And of course, what really got us motivated somehow was learning that nearly 40% of this waste is actually perfectly eatable food. So that is basically thrown away. So we choose to focus on short food supply chain because they give us somehow manageable scale to work on, because while basically still working with everyone in the supply chain, so from farmers to consumers. And the green point is here, which is our main stakeholder in this, is a short food supply chain that has been basically serving us as a living lab to test real world solutions. So basically our approach at the end is, like I'm already mentioned, isn't just about somehow measuring the waste, but it's about creating this collaborative framework where everyone in the food system work together to address these root causes. So yeah, and we are building digital tools that help connect the dots between surplus food and the person or the organization who can use it, whether this is of course people, processor, or maybe biogas plants at the end.
So through the case study, you're trying to give a solution to the food loss and waste problem that is huge nowadays, as you mentioned, with these impressive numbers. And are you employing any key activities to achieve all these goals?
Yeah, of course, there are activities behind, so we are somehow pursuing parallel tracks, I would say, so on the technical and maybe soft side. So on the technical side, we are building DH agri-food data space for secure data exchange. And within that, we are basically testing and exploring different connector technologies and implementing governance framework based on CITRA rulebook, which was developed. So we have been doing that in the past year. And alongside that, we are also developing a specialized food lost and waste platform that creates basically a digital environment for tracking and redirecting this surplus food at the end. So we have been integrating real data from the green point, as said, so from the short food supply chain, to test how this works in practice at the end. So, but of course, as said, so we are doing parallel tracks. So it's not only the technology. Technology is just part of this story, and on the other side, there's a soft approach. So we're organized numerous workshops with the different stakeholders, from basically scenario planning to sessions to hands-on demonstration with the HoReCa sector, for example. We've presented also at different agricultural fairs and conferences to somehow build this awareness and engagement of all the actors. And of course, we are also establishing and fostering public-private partnership through collaboration with the ministries. We have here close collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food in Slovenia, and also Ministry of Digital Transformation. So, and basically these partnerships are essential for creating these bi-directional, I would say, flows between public and private data systems. So this is something that we are working on very, very much in the last, I would say, maybe a few months, which is a close somehow cooperation. And upon that, we are of course also part of different other projects and different other initiatives. So we are not working, I would say, in isolation. So we are actively collaborating with, for example, Zero project and Divine project, and also DS2, Data Space 2 project, to share somehow learnings, what we found out here, and also backwards, so to maximize impact across all the projects.
I understand you are taking a lot of steps and a lot of approaches and activities to achieve all your ambitious goals, and how all these will benefit stakeholders within the food system.
Yeah, so as mentioned already, so we have basically our approach is to create value for everyone involved in the food system. So if maybe we point out some of them, so farmers gain new revenues, opportunity for selling products that might otherwise go to waste, while also getting basically data-driven insights of what is happening in their production planning. So for food processor and distributor, basically they benefit from improved inventory management, I would say, and reduced waste handling cost. Retailers, restaurants can better match supply and demand on the other side, so preventing overstocking, for example, while reducing this disposal cost at the end also. Connection with the public authorities, I would say, they get more accurate data for policy development, while consumers potentially see cost saving as the system basically transformed into more efficient, more sustainable, and so on. So yeah, there's also increased access to surplus food, basically through these new channels that we are building, also digital channels and so on. So yeah, I guess it's a benefit for everyone. So the broader community, I would say, somehow benefits from environmental improvements through reduced greenhouse gas emissions, of course, to economic development through new market-driven business models. Yeah, but at the end, basically what makes this sustainable in long term, I would say, it's creating this system where everyone has some benefits, so there is business for everyone inside. It's not just about basically doing good, that of course it's important, but it's also creating some kind of economical benefits and operational benefits for everyone through this lifetime of some new innovative solutions.
Also, of course, for the environment, as you mentioned, which is a very important aspect to consider regarding food loss and waste, especially in this case that you are also targeting sustainability of this case study.
Yeah, true.
And now I would like to ask you a very important question. Have you set any specific goals regarding food loss and waste?
Yeah, of course. Maybe not that specific, but yeah, of course there are some goals which are behind. So our approach is, of course, to reduce this food loss and waste in both systematic and measurable ways. So we are targeting the critical coordination failures that cause up of this 30% or maybe even more of food that is being lost between production and consumption. So inside this food supply chain. In our region, of course, so we are talking about the pilot region of Pomoria. So our primary goal was somehow to establish this real-time visibility across the entire short food supply chain, so where stakeholders could see production volumes, storage capacities, transportation needs, and retail demand simultaneously, so that they could create this more effective environment for everyone. And we are measuring basically success through improved matching between surplus food and unmet demand. So what is happening on the market? We are basically doing this, or we are somehow working to reduce this waste at key intervention points, I would say. So preventing products to spoil in storage through better inventory management, reducing transportation waste through optimized logistics, minimizing retail waste to improve demand forecasting, and basically this food loss and waste platform which we are developing, it's a digital tool, is basically to address these goals by connecting of course data sets from different organizations. So if maybe I point out an example which we are working on, so we have been connecting this Greenpoint, which is a short food supply chain, with Hudo Dobro, which is a company, it's a processor of goods, and they are taking this surplus food from the Greenpoint, so that is left, that is not used in the supply chain, and creating new added value products, for example. And this is somehow this market or the platform is connecting them in this way. So yeah, we have also set governance standard, of course, which I also mentioned, so through CITERA rulebook, and integrate that sharing benefits for everyone to fairly somehow share the data between them. So yeah, maybe our success metrics include so reducing waste percentages at each somehow steps of supply chain, increased utilization of surplus food streams, improve coordination between of course actors, and yeah, ultimately I would say that yeah, we are proving that food lost and waste isn't something that should be taken certain, but coordination problems that data sharing could probably solve at the end, or could be solved somehow.
Thank you very much. And so far, have you seen any significant improvements in collecting data and monitoring food loss and waste through the case study?
Yeah, I would say we do see some progress in collecting these data. Before our case study, much of this data has been fragmented across different actors in the supply chain. So they have been collecting it, but of course they rarely maybe share this data. So of course one of our major achievements, I would say, is the development of this DIH AgriFood data space platform. This has allowed basically integration of data set from diverse sources, I would say, so for farms, processors, distributors, retailers, HoReCa sector, and yeah, everything is collected in this one environment where it could be analyzed holistically, I would say. So the approach is to collect everything in one place. Of course, we also made some substantial improvements in data quality, and our exploration of this CITERA rulebook has helped us establish clear rules for data governance at the end, so to share the data in the right way. I would say that probably another key aspect is this cooperation with the ministry, so with governance systems, so and creating this bi-directional flows between public and private systems basically will enable somehow to enrich the data sets available in the later stage for analysis. So yeah, perhaps to add, is what is the most important is that we shifted simply from, I would say, measuring waste and collecting some actionable data that enables intervention, because our platform doesn't just tell you how much waste there is, but it helps to identify opportunities for redirection of this surplus food at the end, that it not becomes waste. So I would say that this somehow represents a shift in minds, or shift in somehow from passive, some kind of monitoring, to active, basically waste prevention at the end.
As I understand, a lot of things have been achieved so far, but there is still some way to go to achieve all your initial ambitious goals that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, true. Still some steps
Of
needed.
course,
Yeah.
of course, it's a long process. And
Yeah,
now I
yeah.
would like to ask you, how can better data sharing and digital tools support more sustainable food system and benefit both businesses and consumers at the same time?
Yes, of course. So for in our way, basically better data sharing and these digital tools, we would say, create a probably win-win situation for everyone in the supply chain. So for businesses, I think the advantages are clear, because the better data means reduce inventory costs, lower waste management expenses, and so on. So improve this operational efficiency. Of course, our case study partners are seeing how real-time information allows them to take better decisions at the end about purchasing, storing, product scheduling, and so on. So digital tools also enable them somehow to tell their sustainability story more efficiently, so which increase maybe matters to consumers at the end, and investors on other side. Of course, for consumers, the benefits include potential cost savings as supply chain becomes more efficient, more sustainable. They gain greater transparency about where their food comes from and what is their environmental impact, and so on. So yeah, I would say it's a goal, or it's a somehow added value for everyone. So from a sustainability perspective, these digital tools help us address multiple environmental challenges simultaneously. So they reduce greenhouse gas emissions from both food waste decomposition and unnecessary production, and so on. So they conserve water and land resources. They help close nutrient cycles by keeping organic materials in productive use. So yeah, basically it's an added value for everyone in the supply chain, I would say, at the end.
And this is something very important. And now I would like to ask you something related to the long-term impact of the zero food loss and waste case study. How do you expect the case study to impact the sustainability and efficiency of the whole value chain in the future? You have answered it partly, but I would like us to expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah, of course. So as probably mentioned a few times, so in longer term, we see that somehow transforming the whole or entire food value chains, how it will be operating in the future. So by creating some kind of visibility across the whole chain, we have been enabling so this shift from, I would say, more to reactive or to proactive management of food resources. So for sustainability, the impact will be, I guess, substantial. So food waste accounts for roughly 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So by reducing waste directly, we reduce basically these emissions while also conserving the land, water, and energy used to produce food that is currently being wasted. So all of these is somehow influencing the greenhouse gas emissions at the end. And for efficiency, the benefits will ripple through the chain, basically. So producers will gain better insights into actual demand, allowing more precise production planning. Distributors will somehow optimize their logistic based on real-time data. Retailers will reduce overstocking, not to have something more on their stock. And food service operation will fine-tune their purchasing and preparation of meals, for example. So everyone will benefit because of the data they will have. So we are expecting to see new business models emerge from the data ecosystem we are creating. When previously siloed data becomes accessible, I would say entrepreneurs can develop new innovative services that create additional value from predictive analysis to specialized logistics for surplus food, in our case, for example. But somehow I would say that we are building a foundation for truly circular food economy at the end. So instead of linear path from table to landfill, what we had at the moment or in the past, maybe this is changing already, we are creating a digital infrastructure that supports this circular flow where surplus on one point becomes input at another, I would say. All of this leads to more resilient food system at the end, so that which is less wasteful from adaptive to disruptions, and ultimately more equitable for all the participants at the end.
Thank you. And our final question for today: how do you envision the Zero Food Loss and Waste case study contributing to the overall goals of the Data for Food 2030 project?
Yeah, of course. I think through the conversation, majority of things that Data for Food is somehow tackling, we already mentioned. So our case study demonstrates, I would say, exactly what Data for Food is all about. So using data to create more sustainable food systems. At the end, we are showing how data sharing creates real world benefits for everyone, not just someone. So from small farmers to large retailers or large enterprise, so everyone can benefit from data sharing. We have been particularly focused on fairness and inclusiveness. So our workshops and everything we do, we bring together a diverse group of stakeholders to ensure the solution works for operation, I would say, or somehow for every sizes, not just the big players, also the smaller ones needs to be included, of course. By testing standardized connectors and governance frameworks, we have been building bridges between previously isolated data systems, I would say. So this contributes to the broader vision of interconnected European data spaces at the end, what is also the goal of the Data for Food. Perhaps most importantly, we're creating practical replicable solutions. While we are, of course, focused on Slovenia's food system, or maybe Pomulja food system, the approach I would say that we are developing could be adapted, of course, across Europe. So it's not that we are doing this also only for our case. So our case study provides basically concrete evidence that the better data sharing can solve real problems in our food system at the end.
After all, it is a real-life example of the data economy for food systems, but in a real life.
Yeah, exactly.
As I understand from every insight that you shared with us today.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for sharing all of this information with us today and helping us understand better what you're actually doing with this case study. And of course, thank you very much for joining our podcast today.
Thank you very much also to you, and yeah. It's been a pleasure to join the podcast series.
For me as well. Thank you very much. And as for you, dear viewers and listeners, thank you very much for watching this episode, and don't forget to stay tuned for all the next episodes.